ready, Abby?
I'm ready.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, that'll go on the outtakes. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for everyone for coming. This is a talk on Polymer. And this has been, to be honest, it's been a bit of a tricky one to write, just because it's changed like 3 or 4 times since I've started writing this. So let's see how this goes. So a while ago, a bloke called Brad Frost spoke about atomic design, and to summarize, essentially when you're designing an app or a website or anything like that, you take the smallest possible part of it that you can think of. So for instance, you might design the button and that becomes your atom. Then you might assemble it with a text box to do like a search thing, and then that becomes your molecule. You then combine that with a header to make your organism, and then you start assembling all these different organisms to create a template, and then eventually you have a page. This is quite a nice way of designing because it lets you focus on one specific thing and get that right, and then you assemble it a bit like Lego. Then Alla, I can't say her second name, but Alla at FutureLearn, she spoke about a responsive day out back in June about module design, which is a similar concept. And you can see here she's got like sketches here, and then like a full mock-up which she mixes and matches these mock-ups to create pages. It's a really nice way of working. BEM as well stands for Block Element Modifier, if you don't know. The idea behind it is that you can scope your CSS to individual blocks to stop it from cross-styling issues where you might have like a styling for an anchor tag affecting styles in other anchor tags that you don't want it to affect. So BEM is a good tool for that, and it lends itself to the whole atomic design, breaking parts up into individual components. So as I said, it can be quite overwhelming to look at a design from a high level. It's often feels a lot nicer just to sort of split it down into individual bite-sized chunks that you can focus on. Sorry for the cliche. So this is where Web Components comes in. Web Components is all about focusing on these small individual parts of your application. A popular analogy for this is Lego bricks. So you have the standard brick. As you build them up, you can make all sorts of things like a plane, a ship, a house. I think like they've created a Death Star now and things like that, which is quite cool. And they all work together because they have the little humps on the bricks, and they're like it's like your adapter, so that you can assemble these bricks without having to use glue or anything like that because they fit together. And web components are much like this. They're two-way data bindable, so data can flow in one direction and the other. And they do this by using the DOM and events. So the DOM handles the downstream data flow, and events handle passing information back up to parent elements. Web Components is split into 4 individual specs, which different browser vendors are implementing at different paces and in different ways. 4 specs are template, which is native client-side templating, custom elements, which let you create your own element, your own HTML tags, HTML imports, which lets you, it's kind of similar to CSS, the link in your CSS, and script tags, which load in script and CSS files, except for this is HTML fragments, so that's quite cool. And Shadow DOM, which lets you scope your DOM elements to its own separate DOM. Mozilla are interested in web components, and so are Microsoft as well. So it's not just Chrome. and you can get a good idea of the sort of level of support by heading to Are We Componentized Yet, which has like a table of various states that it's in. So you can see Chrome and Opera, because they're using Blink, is really good. Firefox, they're not too bad actually. You just need to enable a dev flag, and that'll probably be in within the next few versions. Safari kind of lagging a bit, but then I think that's because Apple they're not really that invested in WebKit these days. And you've got Edge as well. Edge is an interesting one because Microsoft, they're interested in web components, but they're not sure if their users are necessarily interested in it, their developers. So they're opened it up to a public vote, and you can vote if you're interested in it, then you can vote for it, which by the end of this talk I hope you will be. So what is Polymer? Well, Polymer is like a thin layer on top of those 4 specifications. The idea behind it is to make working with web components a lot easier, so you don't have to deal with cross-browser differences in the specification. It's designed to disappear, so when everything's implemented and it's stabilized, it's designed to just be a syntax sugar on top of it, and nothing more, no polyfills or anything like that. It's currently it's just had its 3rd year birthday. It was conceived in October 2012. It was previously called Tool Kitchen, which is a fantastic name. It's also the official library for the web platform at Google. I believe it's kind of an interesting one, what with Angular being Google as well, like how they're going to put the two together, but I can imagine they'll probably use them both in conjunction, because Polymer is not going to replace Angular at all. It's just for creating elements. It's not for the complex business logic that Angular can provide. So yeah, I've been trying to think of a way of demonstrating how Polymer works. And the best way to do this is a bit of live coding. It isn't Friday the 13th. So yeah, what could possibly go wrong? To give you an idea of what we're going to be building, it's a small application which lists cat photos, and you can go through and you can pick your favourite cats from the list, and then you can browse your favourite cats at any time. So and for this we're going to be using a collection of Google elements. These are Polymer elements which Google have made for us. It just basically makes this speed of development a lot quicker. So we've got different kinds. They've separated them up into almost like chemical style things, and they've got iron elements, which are your bare essentials. They'll handle visual and non-visual parts of your application. So for instance, you can make AJAX requests using one of the iron elements. The paper elements is a bit more Google material design focused, and then Google Web Components is for using Google APIs. So previously I made Google Maps using a lot of components from there, and there's a few others which they're adding to all the time. So let's just move over here, and I'm going to sit down because I can't really code while standing up. So.
Okay, so we're ready to start building our application. As you can see, there's not really much to look at the moment. There's literally just this tab bar at the top which you can toggle between, and the words cats, cats, cats. But let's have a look at our project anyway and see what's behind the scenes. So we've got an index.html file, which has, it's pretty standard, to be fair. We've got a header area with our meta tag to say our encoding is UTF-8. We've got a title for the page, and a few other bits and bobs, but that's really the only similarities there. The next element is a script tag which loads our polyfill for our web components. So for those browsers that don't support the spec completely, this polyfill will attempt to fill any holes in. It can be quite intensive though, so for those browsers that really don't support it, you might find that your application runs a lot slower than, say, if you were running on Chrome. And that's just because this, effectively the browser is trying to do web components, but through JavaScript, which was never designed to do that in the first place. So it's trying to do quite a lot. So it's just something to bear in mind if you're developing for sort of like a browser that probably doesn't support much of the web component spec. We're also loading our Roboto fonts, and we're loading a few other useful helpers which generate this this page that we've got here. So we've got our paper toolbar and paper tabs to create the tabs up here. Moving down, we've got a style block which basically just sets some simple styles up for the page, and then we're into the meat of our application, our markup. So we've got our paper tabs here with our 2 tabs, all and favorites, and then we've got our main container which currently just has cats in it. So let's get cracking. Let's add a cat to our application. So when starting out, I think it's a good idea just to sort of play around in this file, just to sort of see what your element might look like. It's a good way of sort of rapidly scaffolding an idea out. So we want to display a cat, specifically a cat image. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it cat card, and then inside there I'm going to put an image tag, and then just link to our cat. You should note there's an images folder in this directory which has a load of beautiful cats in there. There's a barra.json file which basically loads Polymer and a couple of helper elements as well, just to get me going. And then there's this data folder, which is what we're going to use later on to simulate a real API without actually having to create one. So there's not really much in our directory apart from the index.html. So we've got our cat card element. I'm pretty happy with how that's looking. So now we just need to create it. So I'm going to create an elements directory just to store all our elements in. And I'm going to call it catcard.html. So first thing we need to do is we need to import Polymer so that we can use Polymer's features. So we're going to create a link. We're going to give it a rel of import and then href of our components polymer.html and close it out. So we loaded Polymer in. We now need to define our element. Now to do this, we write markup, but very specific markup. In this case, we write DOM module. We give that element an ID, and this is going to be the name of our element. So cat card. And close that. Now inside DOM module, there's usually a template tag which dictates how our modules, how our element's going to look, our cat card element, and then we've got a script tag as well, and this defines. Whoops. Let me close it there and close the DOM module. Whoops. There we go. So our script tag defines the functionality behind it. So when you click something, what happens? If you click on cat card, what happens? And inside here, there's a Polymer method, and we just have an is option on there, and we're just going to call it cat card again. Usually your ID and your is have to match up, otherwise it doesn't work. So that's cool. If we go back to our index.html, inside we've got an image tag. So right, how's this going to look? I think we should start with div. It's going to be horizontal and in the center. Div. And then inside we want to stick our image in. If we do it at the moment, you'll should notice that nothing appears. Oop. I don't think I saved. No, I didn't save that, and I also didn't import. So two things. So we need to import our element into the index.html file. href elements cat card. There we go. So now if we give it a refresh, should notice, oh, it's disappeared. But we've got an image tag inside there, so where's that gone? The reason why we're not seeing anything is because we need to tell this element where we want to put our nested content. Now to do that, we use the content tag. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that any images appear in this cat card element. We don't want them to stick any old thing in there because we won't be able to ensure that it looks correct. So, right, so we've got our content tag. Let's give it a refresh. Hey, our cat has appeared. He's looking quite smug, sitting there. So, wicked, we've created our first element. Pat yourself on the back. Right, onwards. At the moment, our it's pretty bland looking element. It doesn't look very nice. So let's add some styling to this element. So in our template tag, whoops, can't spell today. We create a style block, and inside there we're going to say we're just going to say host. Our host. Now host refers to the cat card element itself. We're going to say, let's give the cat card element a display property of block, because usually it's in line. Background color of white, padding of 20 pixels, and width of 400 pixels. Cool. And lastly, we're also just going to make sure that our image that we've put inside also is also styled correctly. We want to make sure that it fills our cat card rather than just being, however big the image is. Excuse me. So to do that, we have to say : content. Now that refers to the content inside the block. We're just going to say inside the cat card element, and we're just going to say all images should have a width of 100%. Cool. Let's give that a refresh now. Ta-da! We've got this white border around the edge. That looks stunning. Cool. So now we've got it looking a bit better. I think it's probably worth adding some functionality, because at the moment it doesn't really do much. I mean, we didn't even really need to make a cat card element. We could have just done what we've done using an image tag and a div. So we haven't really achieved much, I guess. Although it's consistent styling across the board, so there is that. But anyway, I think what we should do is we should add a favorite button, so that we can say whether we like our whether this particular cat photo is our favorite or not, or one of our favorites. We can have probably many favorites. So I think in our cat card element we should add a paper button. So let's add one now. So I'm just going to say, I'll come back. Right, sort that out later. Paper, no I won't. So what we're saying is paper icon button. That's the one. .html, but not .html there. Ooh, there we go. Sorry, I'm still getting used to these snippets. So right, so we've got our paper icon button imported, and this also depends on iron icons. So let's import that. Power components. Oops. Power components. Iron icon. Oops. Iron icon. There we go. Cool. Now, so these two elements, paper icon button, basically is like a button with an icon inside it, and the iron icon is a collection of icons. It's like an icon pack for commonly used icons. So let's have a look, shall we, at adding our paper icon button. So just below div, paper icon, oops, paper icon button. Let's give it an icon of favorite, like so. Cool. And then let's just save that now and see what happens. We have something that doesn't seem to have loaded. Maybe we need an ID of it. No. What are we missing? You see what we're missing? Paper icon button. What does Chrome DevTools say? We've got a cat card. Maybe I spelt this wrong. With a U. Hang on a minute. Hang on a second. Let's just have a look. Icon is favorite. Favorite. There's definitely something there, isn't there? But there's no iron icon. There doesn't seem to be any icon though, which is a bit useless. Oh, silly Billy. Not iron icons, iron icons. Duh. There we go. Plural. So it's easy to make mistakes. Right. So now we've got our little heart. But you know it's in the wrong place. So let's just add some styling. Oops. Paper icon button. We want to float it to the right. Let's give it a margin of 5 pixels. Color of like a light grey. And then we're going to use one of its CSS variables to give it a specific color when it's pressed. Because you know when you press a material button, it kind of has like a ripple effect, and this lets us define what color that is. We can use these variables in our own elements as well, which is quite cool. So that's good. Let's give that a refresh. Oh wait, no. I'm gonna add some. Oops. Just gonna remove the padding bottom on that. This is a bit long. There we go. So you know, as you can see, when we click it, it has that little red ripple, and it's grey. Cool. But at the moment, it's not really doing anything. So you know, when we click this, it doesn't really change colour or anything. So let's wire this button up, so that it does something. So the first thing you might remember, if you ever want to add an action to an element, you have to usually do like on click, for instance, and then pass it a callback. It's no different in Polymer. In this case, we're going to use on tap, so it works on mobile as well. So this will trigger whenever the button is clicked or tapped on. And we're just going to call it favorite tapped. Cool. So that's our callback. And we're going to define favorite tapped down here, like so. And we're just going to say alert favorite tapped, just to show off. So if we refresh this, oh, I've already spotted a bug. Spelt it with a U. Right, so if we click on this, as you can see, it's giving me an alert to say that I've tapped the favourite, which is cool. So that's not really that useful to us now, though. We need to figure out a way of setting our state, whether this card is favorited or not. An alert isn't really going to help us with that. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to have an attribute on our cat card element called favorite. And when that attribute exists, we'll colour the heart red, and when it doesn't exist, we'll leave it as default colour. So we can do this by setting up properties in our Polymer element. And we're going to give this property a name, so we're going to call it favorite. Okay. And we need to give it a type. So we're going to say, no, we don't need to give it a type, sorry. We need to give it a value though. So we're going to give it a value of false, because we don't want to make all of our cats favourites. We want to let the user decide whether it's a favourite or not. We're also going to set notify to true. This enables two-way data binding, and essentially whenever the favourite is changed, it sends a message, sends an event out to say that it's changed. And then we're also going to add reflect to attribute, and this is what adds that attribute, that favourite attribute, to the cat card element. And it basically just takes the name of your property and sticks it on the end of the cat card element. Cool. So we have that. We need to add some functionality here. So we need to say when it's tapped, set the favourite to equal the opposite to what it currently is, so that it changes. Okay. And lastly, we just need to add some styling to say, you know, when it does exist, when our cat card element has the favourite attribute, that our paper icon button, that heart button, is actually, instead of grey, it's that red that we defined earlier. Cool. I think we've got everything in place now. So let's just give this a refresh. Oh, we've made a mistake. Let's have a look, see what it's saying. Unexpected identifier on line 49. Oh, silly me, just missed a comma out on there. There we go. Hey, we're back. Cool. So now if we click that, as you can see, it's gone red. And if we go into the DOM here, oops, gone to the wrong section. Let me just close that up. In our main container. So we've got our cat card element. Now when we watch that element, when we click it, oh, there we go. See, it's added the favourite attribute there. And then when we click off, it disappears. When we click on again, it appears. When we click off, it disappears. So that's cool. We now have the ability to favourite our cats. Wicked. But you know, we've got quite a few cat pictures, not just the one. So it'd be nice to be able to show the others. So, you know, one way we could do this is we could say, okay, cat cards, then image, source, images, cat2, cat card, oops, like that, and then do 3, 4, and 5. But you know, how many times do you do something like that? You know, we don't, when we write a website, we don't do everything manually ourselves. You know, what if later down the line I add another 100 pictures, and I've got to go through the HTML file and add 100 more cat cards? It's a bit laborious task, isn't it? So it'd be nice if we could just iterate through a series of cats and display cat card elements for each one of those cats. Now, I reckon this is probably best in a new element to abstract this, you know, this detail away. So I'm thinking of calling it, if we call that cat card, let's call that cat list. Cat list like that. And I think that's what it's going to look like. I think that's good. So, right, okay, let's press on. So let's just get rid of that for now, and then let's create our cat list element. We're going to import that, and we're going to call that cat list. So there we go, we've created our DOM module element, and we've given it a name, Wicked. We also need to import, oops, we also need to import a regular, sorry, lost my trail of thought there, our cat card element. That's correct, yeah. So that we can use it in this cat list element. And lastly, I'm just going to cut this out, and then we're going to paste it inside here, like so. And I'm going to get rid of the star block because I don't need that right now. There we go. Yeah. One last thing we need to do is, currently we have cat card imported, we need cat list instead for the index.html file. Right, let's give that a refresh. Oh dear. Looks like our image is in the wrong spot. There we go. Although, yeah, we don't need elements either because the cat list is in elements as well. There we go. Wicked. The styling's a bit off here. I think that's just because our flexbox isn't correct. So we'll fix that now. So in order to do that, all we have to do is let's just wrap. Let's put this out a bit. Let's wrap that in a div. Give it a class of layout. Again, vertical and center. Oops, center. Cool. And let's close the div. Good. Cool. Oops, nearly deleted our cat card element then. Been disastrous. Right, give that a refresh, see what happens. Yay, there we go, it's back to normal. Let me click that, yep, that all works. Wicked, so we've now got our cat list element. But again, it's not really doing anything. You know, we still haven't solved the issue of being able to show lots of cats. I think what we need to do is we need to create another a property. And let's call it cats. It's going to be an array of cats, and just to make life easy, let's give it a default value for now. we'll just use the top 3 from there, and then make sure we close that off. And that's all closed off. Yep. Cool. So we have our cat's property. Now let's use it. So what we can do is we have a template tag, but template tags can also be used to create for loops. So we can write template is DOM repeat to say we're repeating stuff. It's our cat's property that we want to repeat as an item, and we want to call each item cat. Okay. I'm just missing that. There we go. Let's sort the indentation out there, and then let's close our template element out. And let's sort the indentation out there. Oops. There we go. Cool. We now need to bind that cat information, because at the moment, if we refresh the page, we just have a series of cats all looking the same. Which isn't that great? So we can use the curly braces again. Cat image to refer to that bit there, and let's bind the favorite attribute that we had on our cat card. So cat.favorite, and this will set that heart whether it's red or grey, depending on whether the favorite attribute is false or true. The last thing is they're a bit bunched up at the moment, so let's just add some margin on our cat card. Refresh. There we go. We've got some cats now. Wicked. It's going quite well. So we've got our cat list, and it's now iterating through some cats. That's cool. So, right, we've got that, but we still have to manually put in the cats in the cat list. It'd be nice if we could make a call to like an API. Now, I'm not going to bother making an API in this, but we do have our cats.json file that I showed you earlier with all our cats in it. So let's pretend that this is an API for argument's sake. Now, I'm thinking what we should do is, much like we have a script tag to load JavaScript, let's create a cat service element to load our cats. And I think what this is going to do is it's going to have a cats property, and we're going to define cats there, and that's going to have a cat, that's got its cats property, and we're going to type that there. Now what this is doing is it's binding, essentially cat service is populating its cats property with some cats. Then I'm saying in the scope of index.html, create a cats element, bind the cats property of the cat service to the cats variable in index.html, and in cat list I'm saying that the cats attribute should be bound to the local cats variable. So essentially it's like plugging that cat's attribute into that cat's attribute. And in order to make this work, we need to add another template tag, and this one is going to be called DOM bind. The reason why we have to add that is because if we didn't, none of this would work, because there's no concept of binding in a HTML file. It's Polymer magic. So we need to tell Polymer that this is a special section of our HTML that we need to do some binding of data to. So that's that. So while we're here, let's just make sure we've got our cat service imported. And finally, let's actually create the element itself. So cat service.html, cool. Yeah, that's all good. Cat service, properties. Let's give it property of cats, and that's going to be an array, and we're going to notify people when it changes. Yeah, we don't need the style block because there isn't going to be any styling really. And we're going to make use of an Ajax form, Ajax element, which just makes connecting to an API so much easier. Because what you can do is you can write that. Oops, I just do iron Ajax. We don't really need an ID. Auto basically queries whenever we have a page load. Let's give our URL as data cats.json. We want to handle it as JSON, and we want to bind the last response to our cats property, like so. Ooh, excuse me, sorry. Cool. I just got rid of that handle as JSON because by default Iron Ajax assumes that your data is JSON anyway, so we don't need that in there. And that's everything for our cat service, pretty much. When you create an element, it doesn't have to necessarily display anything. It can literally just be a service layer. So cool, we've got that. Now let's save that and let's give that a refresh and see what happens. Fingers crossed everything works. Kind of worked, but kind of not perfect just yet because we're missing oops. We're kind of, what we're missing here is DOM bind, yeah. Properties is defined, yeah. Yeah. There we go, last response. There we go. We weren't binding. Oh well, right, well, never mind. See, bugs like that can be really tricky to find. And I think that's why they're trying to create the linter, because it makes life so much easier. Cool, okay. So we now have a series of cats that we can add favoriting. We can favorite if we like. But now if we click on our favorites tab, well, we see our favorites, but we also see the other cats. So we want a way of filtering that out. And the way we do that is we use computer properties for this. So cat list. Let's have a look at our cat list element. So we want to set, well, getting ahead of myself here. We have so we want to create like a show attribute on here, I think, and then we want to say like favorites. Okay, so when favorites is active, only show our favorite cats. I'm going to move this up as well because what I want to do, I'll move that down. a step, and then just indent this, because what I want to do is I want to bind this and say cats, oh, not cats, selected is equal to oops, selected, okay, and on my script I just want to say tabs dot selected equals all, just to give it a default value. I don't know if that's going to work, but we'll find out. Okay, so we have our show attribute. Now we want to say on here we want a computed property. So let's create one now. We don't need this anymore, and we can write this in shorthand like so. We also want to give our show property, so that's a string like so. Now we want a computed property to say either true or false depending on what the show and whether the cat card is a favourite or not. So we want to say compute hidden. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that yet. We're going to say it up here. So we can set an attribute called hidden. A hidden is just like a special attribute which says, you know, if it exists, then display none on that cat card. And we're going to bind we're going to pass in our computed property, our computed property, yeah, or computed attribute even. And then we're going to pass in the show variable and also the favorite variable. And then we're going to say compute hidden function show and favorite. Return if show is equal to favorites. How do we spell it? With a U. Whoops. Let's just copy that, just so I don't make a spelling mistake. And if the cat is not a favorite, then display false. Otherwise, display true. Yeah. Yeah? Yeah. Cool. So now let's give that a refresh. And if we click on all, and if we click on favorite, nothing happens. Wicked. So let's just get rid of that. I don't trust that. No, still not doing anything. Cats list. Hidden is compute hidden. That looks right. Oh, silly Billy. Cat, not favourite. And then that's cat. Deary me. There we go. So here we can see only our favourites are shown. However, if we click on all, we see all of our cats. There we go. And there's our application. Quite simple really, but yeah, quite neat. This is all powered using web components. So yeah, cool.
So as I mentioned, it's not quite ready yet. get my, sorry, it's not quite ready yet. I might stand up for this. Because like the tooling's not really there yet. Like you noticed I had a few issues when things weren't going quite to plan, finding what was actually wrong with it. And it was just typos all the time. So the Polymer guys are coming up with a few tools to help us. The most common problem you'll get is the white screen of death, which basically happens whenever you have a typo and it doesn't know how to render your element. In my example, I was lucky that I had an image tag inside it, so it still displayed the image because it knew how to display an image. But for anything else, it would just display a white screen like that, and you're left going, what's going wrong? So the Polymer team created a linter called Polylint. It basically goes through your elements and checks to make sure that they're correct. You know, they're formatted correctly, and you haven't made any silly typos. That you can download via npm and just run it in your command line or integrate it with Gulp or whatever. There's Polydev, which lets you check the performance of your elements. So if one's particularly slowing the browser down, you can see it. Word of warning on this one though, it's quite new and a lot of people have said it's broken Chrome for them. So just something to bear in mind. All good stuff. And Polyserve lets you, basically it's like a web browser, normal web browser, but it lets you inspect individual components just by doing like /components and then your component name, which is useful for when you're developing. There's a couple of interesting websites as well that you can read more about web components. So there's webcomponents.org, which contains everything there is to know about web components, including articles, talks that people have done, hopefully not this one. Any useful libraries such as Polymer. I think Mozilla have done a library called Xtags as well. I haven't checked that out, but it looks pretty cool. And also the browser support currently. There's also the Polymer guys did a Polymer summit in Amsterdam back in September. Many good talks on various things from basic usage to performance and how to style elements and all sorts. But on the back of that, they also did this Code Labs site, which is really cool, which lets you build. It gives you a series of tutorials on various things. I did that one, which was really good. The Google Maps one made it sort of do navigation for me and everything, so that was cool. The Polymer site is another good place to go, but be careful, watch out for that bit there, because version 1 changed a lot of things. 0.5 was the previous version that was around for a couple of years, and a lot of articles are based on 0.5. 1.0 is their production ready release, but when you're searching on Google you might come across an article that, and then you click on it, it goes to the Polymer website and you start reading it, and then you'll finally notice it says 0.5 and none of it applies, which I've done many times. Polycasts is another YouTube channel on the Google Developers YouTube. A guy called Rob Dodson does a load of interesting videos on how Polymer works behind the scenes, as well as how to do various things like binding to objects and observers and all that kind of thing, which I didn't really go into here. There's Built with Polymer as well. That's another site which lists all the interesting apps that have been built with Polymer. There's a lot of Google ones on there, obviously, but there's other third-party ones. And to summarize, in the end, this will probably all change, and yeah, it's not going to stay. It's changed since writing this talk. It's changed majorly about 3 or 4 times, so it will probably change again. So we'll do a part 2 at some point. But thank you for all coming. Sorry it took a bit longer than expected, but yeah, thanks. Any questions apart from Paul? No? Yeah?
Should we start using it now?
No. The reason why I say that is because of the problems that we've had here. Imagine like if we made a Maxis out of it. That was probably a bad example, but you get what I mean. Because you don't know what's going to happen.
But is it the future?
I think, I mean, I'm not the only person to say this, but I think this is probably going to be the way we do things in the future. Probably the far future, but I think we will be making our own elements. And then browser vendors will be going, right, that's a popular element, we'll make that native. I think that's how it's going to go. This was spoken about in the responsive day out. One of the girls there was saying that if we do get that responsibility, we need to be really careful that the elements that we make are not just sort of, well, how to put this, are badly thought out, badly designed, because that'll just end up in IE for the next 10 years, and we'll have to deal with it.
Though, right?
Yeah. So there's that challenge. We've got to be good with our newfound power. So yeah. Any other questions?
Do you know which way it's going with Microsoft and Edge? That you showed the votes?
It could go either way. I think the votes are currently in favour, but it could change. It all depends. They might even discard the votes entirely and just go, we don't want to do this. Obviously it comes down to cost of development in the end. So.
Edge added support for template overnight.
Did it?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know what they're doing with the other three that you had listed, but that was it.
Wicked. That's really good news. Yeah, hopefully they will be implementing the other ones then.
Maybe just put them over the edge. One not intended. Is there anything it's particularly unsuited to?
You wouldn't want to mention the difference between Angular and this. You probably wouldn't want to go overboard with business logic on this. I'm trying to think of an example, but so when I did that cat service, all that was doing was just grabbing a JSON file, nothing more, and the cat card was just changing a couple of values. I think that's what Polymer is suited for. Anything above that, I would consider using something like Angular or Ember or any of the others that are more tied into that kind of business domain. They've just got more tools that you can use. So. But they are thinking about adding routing and stuff like that, which I'm not sure is a good idea, but yeah, they're going to add it. So, cool. Any other questions? Thank you.